your thing. Hopefully everyone can hear us.
I hope so.
Or not. Huh?
It would be such a shame if they couldn't hear all the.
You know, I had something very odd.
What?
I was looking at the page views.
The page views?
Page views.
What are those?
So for your videos, YouTube very helpfully gives you page views.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if I can pull them up from here. Let me see. Let's see, I go my channel. So usually, it depends on, let me see, can I get more here? Let's go videos. You know, we have over 100 subscribers now. We have like 140 subscribers, which
Of course.
I think is awesome. But usually, you know, these daily videos average somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 views. So, you know, people are watching these. I mean, maybe, I don't know, I'll have to dig deeper into the statistics or the numbers.
20's a lot.
No, it's not that many, but I don't know how long. So you don't know. Well, I'll have to look a little deeper into how long people are viewing, right? I mean, somebody might just view for a few minutes. They might, you know, check in the beginning.
That's good. I'm glad they're checking in. Is that,
They might be watching for 5 minutes.
is that like the live part, or is that the video?
That's the video, because we usually only have a few subscribers.
How
Oh, you know
come
what? You know what I haven't done? This is
How
weird.
come the thing is up?
I have not switched this over. There we go. So you were doing all that for nothing,
I've been
because
upside down this whole
the whole time, yeah,
for
since we
nothing.
went live, and because I didn't put it on, I didn't switch over.
It's fine.
It's hard to be the star of this show, and then also the producer and the writer and the
Tell me more
as
about,
well as the.
Tell me more about
cameraman.
how hard your life is.
It's very hard. Your life's about to get substantially harder if you keep it up. Oh yeah. What was I gonna say? But there was a video last week. It was the beginning of the week. It had 240 views, 10 times.
Weird.
And it hasn't, like, so it has gone up, right? So there has been 20. There were days where it was only 9. I'd have to go back and see what days there were, because sometimes it's like maybe it's a holiday or whatever.
Yeah.
But this was, I think, early last week, there was 250 views. And I was like, who is watching this video? Like, did we say something controversial? Did we do something funny inadvertently?
Do you read the comments ever?
Sometimes, yeah.
Is it ever? I don't know. Did they say?
Sometimes you get bots that will make a comment or do advertising in your comment section. And so if I see something, because sometimes it is inappropriate, I will delete it. But I didn't see anything that really jumped out at me.
Yeah.
You know, there's always some weird ones, like that I'm not sure what they are. So I don't, you know, it's odd to me that I got 250 one day, and then you know, the next day it went back to normal, or our typical numbers. So I'm wondering if, you know, sometimes you get picked up by the algorithm in a way, and you just get more impressions, and I think that's what I looked at. I looked at like where the source of the page views, and it looked like it was just from a lot of impressions. So then I'm wondering, like, what did we do or say in that video that gave so many more impressions that people actually clicked through to watch?
What?
I have to go back and read. I just noticed it. But there's a whole thing about hacking the algorithm of YouTube to surface your videos. To
Does
allow
it like
people.
scan your audio and then like?
They scan your audio, especially
I know
or at
for
least
music.
for copyright. Yeah. But I don't know that they're scanning for
Like tags and
language
stuff?
or, I mean, you can, I think there is a way to closed caption it, but it's always like comically wrong.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's,
But you could go in and like close caption it yourself, right? And
yeah,
isn't
oh yeah,
there-
there's programs that'll do that for you.
And you can tag the video and stuff that'll make
Oh yeah, all that stuff, but I don't tag any of it. I don't go in. I go in later, much later usually, and I organize and I'll like number these videos. And sometimes, if it's something that is, you know, has a particular topic that I want to keep track of, like maybe I will, you know, put that in the title. Maybe I did that. I mean, I did do something last week where I went in and started titling these things, but I don't know.
Do you remember the title?
It was just, I mean, it's daily lockdown workout. I mean, there's nothing special about it, right?
That's not a title.
So I don't think I did anything that differently. I just don't know why it got picked up by, you know, 10 times what it usually gets picked up by.
Just gotta thank the YouTube gods and.
Well, I don't know if it's thank them. I mean, it's just, you know, it's like you kind of want to know, like, what's the wrinkle here?
Yeah.
Is it just like a hiccup in the system, you know? Or is it something that you can intentionally do? You know, like Mr. Beast apparently is really good. This is how he made his name, about like figuring out what the. Well, you don't like Mr. Beast?
I respect his success.
I mean,
kind of.
What do you mean, kind of?
Well,
That
he's
works hard. He counts at like a million or something live.
He's successful, good for him. But like what he makes is garbage, kind of. Like it's like.
No, what he makes is money.
Yeah, that's great. But like, and I'm not gonna say I haven't like watched dozens of his videos, right? But it's just like.
It's like eating McDonald's food,
yeah,
right? It's McDonald's for your brain.
So I just like, on one hand, I respect it, and he does seem to have a methodology that brings in viewership, because I like couldn't stop watching, because it's just ridiculous. It's over the top. It's crazy, and it answers all those like childhood questions, like what would happen if I filled a swimming pool with bouncy balls? You know, like you would never find out in normal life, but this guy just happened to have the formula.
He's got a team. It's not just one dude. It's
Yeah.
like it's like a company.
Yeah, but he also like puppets them around like a mad jester type thing, and it's kind of weird, but like you know.
Like he went for years, you know. Like I think he started off doing like Magic the Gathering videos or something, and then he started doing these stunts.
Yeah, like
it's like stunt videos, right?
I'm not saying it doesn't have its place, but I feel weird if we were to compare ourselves.
No, what I'm saying is I'm not comparing myself. But what I'm saying is there are people who, and not just him. I mean, this is a big business, right? This is a group of companies and YouTube creators who, you know, they make it their mission to you know, figure out what will trigger your algorithm to surface, you know, you on TikTok or, and sometimes it's very obvious, right? Like stuff that like kittens probably going to get a lot of views, right? And other things we don't need to go into, but there's some like easy, like low-hanging fruit that if you just want to get
put boobs in your title.
Scantily clad people, will probably get you up there.
Yeah, it's just
people doing a lot of dumb stuff. Well, also,
just because it's effective, does that mean it should be done?
It creates jobs. Right? It creates wealth. I mean, one day the aliens come down and examine human civilization and like dig out a hard drive, or you know, find the moon base with all of Google's servers. They will see that it's packed with Mr. Beast videos or whoever, you know, and they'll be like, this is why human civilization cratered. You know, because they shifted from doing important things to Mr. Beast videos.
I feel like it's been a while since, I don't know. What does America do? This is a question.
We rule with freedom.
Well, remember,
we invented freedom, Kevin, like Elio invented leverage.
We used to make stuff, right? We used to
Trouble.
be involved in like manufacturing, right? We used to like grow food and export that, like tobacco and stuff, cotton. What do we do now? Like as a unit, like what is our overall collective stuff that we do?
It's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I think we still do a lot of manufacturing. We still do a lot of agriculture. We have a lot of tech. We do, you know, like high tech.
Yeah. But I mean, isn't Japan the high tech country?
Well,
I guess it's not like a complete ownership of technology, but
I think that what they have done, or my sense, I mean, look, I'm totally ignorant on this, is that they've because they have low population growth and a very small working population, that they've had to integrate technology into a lot of things, and so that is where they excel.
All in the name of packing more people into the small living space?
No, I mean, what I mean is, they are like negative net population growth.
Yes.
So they don't have people to do work, right?
Oh, that
There's a
makes sense.
reason why everything is a vending machine in Japan.
Yeah.
It's because they don't have people to sit behind a counter, nor is that efficient anyway,
Yeah.
right? So
Makes sense.
I think, when you think of what we export these days, I mean, I don't know what the numbers are, but I still think we do a lot more higher tech manufacturing, but China's doing that. I mean, probably they do it for a lot cheaper.
Aren't we military manufacturing?
I mean, we do have some large companies that manufacture, but I don't know where it's all made, right? Like the sensitive stuff's all here, I would imagine. But like if you need to make like, I don't know, whatever, the components, like they probably made somewhere else that's cheaper, right? I don't know if it's, I don't know if every M16 or whatever they're shooting now
I don't know if
is made in America.
Do they allow foreign contractors to take over military stuff?
Some. I mean, there are certain sensitive components that they will not,
Yeah.
or they will force them to keep it here in this country. But I think there are other less sensitive components. But yeah, I think you're right. I mean, a lot of America's manufacturing industrial base has been eroded over the time because we can't really compete even on wages, or regulatory atmosphere.
Yeah.
But I don't know what the numbers are, right? I don't know, like year over year or decade over decade. Like, okay, at this, obviously after World War II, we accounted for a large percentage of worldwide production of everything.
Yeah.
Everything else was like in smoking ruins,
Yeah.
right?
So it's like not only did we have to rebuild the stuff, but there was no one else around to rebuild the
It's
stuff.
kind of like I think, a tough comparison, right? If you look at like what America did in the 1950s and 60s, it's not like we outcompeted people to get to that position.
Yeah.
We're the only country left
Well,
that hadn't been totally decimated.
Isn't war the competition?
And we also have a lot of natural resources, right? That we have here that we don't have to import like many other countries. I mean, I don't know that there's any oil in Europe. A lot of natural gas.
Gas and coal, I think.
But nobody likes living next to a coal mine,
Yeah.
right? Unless you're a coal miner, I suppose.
Even then, it's probably not ideal. But if you were to come up with a collective goal for the United States, what's a good one?
Education.
Education?
Yeah, be smarter. Know some history.
But why?
What do you mean, why?
What would
Because
you
we
do?
make a lot of dumb collective decisions based on ignorance of history.
So history.
Well, but also, a lot of other things. We make a lot of faulty assumptions because we're not careful about making sure the premises upon which those assumptions are built are actually accurate or, reasonable.
Yeah, but like, all right, say we've been having this conversation about like the founding fathers and the Constitution and all that. Like, let's say you and I as a unit agree that, hey, like, this is clearly hypocritical. It's not based soundly on any sort of logic.
What's that?
Yeah, whatever.
Okay.
You know, like,
Yes.
we're two people in an entire nation. You know, what do we do with that information? Like, asking people to study history, I guess, like.
No, I don't think it's, you have to put it in the schools, right? Like, you have to put in, you know, one of the things that, well, I know it cuts both ways, right? Like, I know that the argument for federalism, for, in other words, letting the states decide what they want to teach for themselves.
Isn't that republicanism?
No, it's federalism.
Oh.
So the idea that, you know, I mean, this is deteriorated or eroded over time. The idea that, hey, every state should have, you know, the prerogative to decide how to set its curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's been eroded too because, you know, if you want federal funds, you got to teach, you got to abide by whatever the federal government, Department of Education is telling you to do. You know, it's not that much, but there's things you can't teach.
Yeah.
But, you know, that means there's wide variation in what kids are learning. And I get it, you know, sometimes, you know, they say that the states are the, what do they call it? The laboratory of democracy, right? Every state can try its own experiments with all these things. But the problem is we're doing human experiments when we're talking about education, right?
Yeah.
Where, you know, if you don't teach kids about science, right, and you don't teach them about history, like real, I don't mean all the bloody, gory stuff necessarily, but like really teach them how to think critically. I don't know how you can have.
Do you learn that in history class typically?
It depends on your teacher. It depends on your school. It depends on, like, some schools are very much, so there's studies about this, right? There's studies about like really wealthy, you know, schools that teach, you know, their kids about how to be involved in government, right? How to, you know, you're going to be a citizen, and part of being a citizen is, you know, participating, running for office. Whereas in other poorer districts, it's like, hey, let's just try to get you a vote, you know? And I don't think that you know, that kind of disparity or unevenness in teaching is a good thing. I mean, everybody should be taught that they, you know, have almost an obligation to participate. So, I mean, I think that's kind of almost the bedrock of, you know, being able to teach or think critically is in any discipline, but in general, in your life in general, is a really important skill that usually people get taught by the parents, but not everyone teaches this very well.
By critical thinking, do you mean like skepticism?
Yeah.
Just,
but also, you know, not just skepticism, not just questioning your sources, not just questioning, you know, how these things, what the narrative is, right? Because you can have the correct facts, but a very interesting, you know, a creative narrative,
yeah,
right? So, you know, being skeptical is like an important first step in trying to think for yourself, right? So being skeptical, but also like, how do I think logically, right? What are my biases that I have to guard against? You know, my own personal and maybe cultural biases that I have to sort of take into account whenever I'm thinking about anything. You know, how do I put these, it's not just like, oh, I don't believe in that. It's more, well, how do I construct something? How do I decide what's in my interests? Or, you know, what's in our collective interests, right? And you know, look, we're a country of individuals, right? And everyone's like in it for themselves, fine. But, you know, that's how everyone thinks. You have all these problems that arise from everyone thinking just about themselves. And there's this idea that, hey, you know, the free market will correct everything. Well, you know, I don't think history actually supports that. In fact, I think history definitively refutes the idea that if we just leave everything alone, it'll all work out for the best.
Yeah, I mean, who's the famous economist? Milton Friedman?
One of them, yeah.
I think he likes to mention that it's statistically shown that, like, maybe not unfettered capitalism, but at least capitalism has done more to bring people out of poverty. But
well, here's the thing, that there's never been such a thing as unfettered capitalism. That doesn't, I was reading, this is a good point, right? So people like this, I've seen this all the time, like, oh, let's look at what capitalism has done to lift people out of poverty. True, right? Okay. But here's the thing, they were looking, this article was looking specifically at China.
Yeah.
And they were saying like, the Chinese government just didn't like say, hey guys, you just go be capitalist, and then it just magically, the magic capitalist, fairies showed up and sprinkled capitalism dust over everybody. No, they were very strategic about what they did. They would uproot entire villages and move them closer to a road or a river or a group of factories, like an industrial zone, right? Because they're like, you guys are way out there doing nothing. You can't, it doesn't matter what your philosophy is. If you're 1,000 miles from the nearest transportation hub or industrial complex, you can't sell your goods. It doesn't matter how good they are.
Yeah.
So they kind of like, it's the invisible hand, but they're helping. They're picking up everybody. They're moving them. They're making like the dams. They're like, crap, we need a dam here. We need to create some power. Okay, everyone in the valley, get the F out. We're going to relocate you. And I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm saying that the idea of like capitalism just took over, right? Like they just raised the like in a magic show where the guy raises the curtain and then they take the curtain down, the guy's like out of the straitjacket, or they've gotten out of the water tank, or they switched places, or he's disappeared. They didn't just raise the curtain and then drop it and then everything was all better. Like they actually were active in socially engineering everything, like brutally in some cases.
Well, in some cases, like unfettered capitalism has been brutally enforced on other nations. Like speaking of
Well,
China.
my point is just that it's not government free. The government is intimately involved in these projects. And it's the same thing that's true in our country. It's never been, the last time we had unfettered, the closest thing we had to unfettered capitalism was like right before the stock market crash. Right? That thing wasn't going so well.
I was thinking the Chinese Opium Wars, where
You love opium.
people.
Why are you fixated on opium?
Well, it's just like, this is my example of like unfettered capitalism, or people using capitalistic reasoning to do something like extremely immoral, right? Like the British had a trade imbalance with China. China didn't want anything from the British. The British had a whole bunch of opium, and they were like, all right, like we're gonna just smuggle this in. And they started selling it to traders outside of China. They started smuggling it.
And let me ask you this. Was the English government totally like uninvolved in all this? Or was the English government very much involved?
I think both governments were involved.
Yeah.
One was trying to make trade free, the other was trying to
Ergo, not unfettered capitalism.
Wait, the one government was trying to make the capitalist system be unfettered, right? So like, even though they were intervening.
And not in a good way, right? Not in a good way. Like, we are going to sell our opium.
It wasn't good for a specific party,
exactly.
but like that's,
exactly.
But like, that is the example of unfetteredness, right? Where it's
like, I don't think that, I think that supports my point.
What do you mean?
Well, I didn't make this point, the second part of the point, but it's very hard to find an example of unfettered capitalism with no involvement of a government that actually has resulted, this is part B, in actual good for both sides. Yes, unfettered capitalism is really good for the owners of the capital. It's really bad for consumers and the workers. And anybody else who happens to be collateral, right?
Yeah.
So,
but if you take all
I'm not sure how much that gives an example of like, oh yeah, it's created wealth and lifted people out of poverty.
Yeah.
It made people a lot of money, but it didn't make anybody better for it.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, maybe the sailors, or maybe the soldiers, or maybe the middlemen, or maybe like maybe the dealers or the owners of the opium dens.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe they did okay. But the vast majority of people, it was a wealth transfer away from them and into the pockets of relatively few number of people, right? Okay, well, that's not a good example of how like capitalism is like win for everybody.
Oh yeah, I wasn't. My example of or the saying that what's his name? Milton Friedman.
Milton Friedman.
Yeah, has made that example. I don't agree with it, but actually I don't know. Like, it's true. What he says is like it has lifted people out. Like it's a true statement. But it's also done a significant amount of damage that we're still facing today.
I mean, these guys, look, I can't argue economics against Milton Friedman, okay? He's very smart. But what I found in many instances, is that they take highly artificial examples that prove their point.
Uh-huh.
Or they talk a lot about one thing, and it could be true, right? Like, I'm not saying capitalism is bad. I'm not a communist, right? But I'm just saying, like, I would say I'm more of a moderate capitalist, right? Like, I don't think that unfettered, unregulated capitalism is a total net good for society. It's very much a good for the people who, are at the top end of this trade, right? But in terms of the collateral damage on everybody else, and yeah, there's a certain class of people who will benefit, right? The salespeople, right? The petty bourgeoisie. If I were going to use capitalist or communist, what am I doing here? Language, I guess, but Marxist. I don't know. I don't buy it. I think some capitalism is a good thing, right? Like, it will lift people out of poverty, but it takes some government direction. Or it has taken government direction.
Yeah. Like for things in terms of environmental damage control.
Yeah, the tragedy of the commons, right?
What was that?
So that's when everybody's acting in their own self-interest. Then, when somebody does something that is, is going to be hurtful or damaging to, somebody else, like with essentially when everyone's acting on their own behalf, the things that happen to everybody, there's nobody responsible to clean it up or fix it or
Isn't
prevent it.
that Nash's game theory? Did you ever see A Beautiful Mind?
I never saw that.
Well, this guy came up with this game theory where it's like, if everybody acts in their own self-interest, in doing so, they end up clashing, and then nobody gets their self-interested thing, whatever it was. But if they all work together, and maybe if they don't work towards their individual top choice or thing, and they all settle for second best choice. Right? They can create a stable social connection network thing that will make their choices work for everybody.
Yes.
And in his example, he used picking up women, right? Where they were at the bar, and there was one really beautiful woman, three unattractive girls, and there were three guys. And they were the idea was if all three of them go after the hot one,
only one will get it.
They're probably no one will get it.
Right,
and everyone's going to have a bad time. But if they each go
including
after
the women.
Yeah. So then if you instead compromise and go after your
Is that the example he actually used in the...
Yeah. Well, it's it was they were at a bar and he was I have an idea.
Right.
An epiphany moment. Yeah. And then that's
well, but here's the problem, right? People act irrationally, or their perceived self-interest is not always their optimal self-interest. Well, what an external observer who's looking at a whole slew of factors might say is their optimal self-interest, right? People act irrationally, or they act rationally based on incomplete information.
But everyone has incomplete information.
Yes. But some people act rationally even with incomplete information, right? So you can make no one ever has perfect information. Maybe percentages, some rough odds, right? So you can make a decision even in the absence of complete knowledge, right? You can hedge your bets.
Yeah.
In ways that are rational, but not everyone does that. A lot of people just do stupid shit for immediate gratification.
Yeah.
Right? It's just amazing to the amount. I'm not a genius, right? I don't think I'm above this. I had a case once where it was H&R Block, and what they would do is they would say, "Hey, Kevin, you know what? It's a great idea. You should really be saving for your retirement. So what we'll do is if you check this box, we'll take some percentage of your refund, and we'll start a 401k or an IRA for you, depending on which one you want."
Yeah.
And you'd be like, "Oh, that's great. Thank you, H&R Block. Thank you for helping me save for my retirement." Right? The problem was that the fees were so high, right, and the returns were so low, that essentially what they were saying was, "Why don't we just keep your tax return, and you just go F yourself," right?
Yeah.
Now, a lot of the things that they were doing they weren't necessarily lies, or hey, this is a good idea to save for your retirement, right? But they don't disclose, or people don't ask some critical questions. So even though you're like, "Hey, I'm saving for my retirement. This makes 100% sense. I'm making good financial decisions," if you don't look under the hood, you know, and ask the right questions, because they're not going to tell it to you, or you don't understand what it means. Like, you don't understand that if you pay X in management fees, but what's my return on this? I don't know. I didn't ask what the return. Oh, we give you a market return. Mm-hmm. What does that mean? I don't know. What does that mean? 2%? Mm-hmm. Well, if you don't do the math, or you don't look at even understand the equation, you don't understand what you're investing. What you're investing is H&R Block's retirement program, not yours, right?
Yeah.
So that could be an example in my mind of someone could be acting logically, reasonably, rationally, but they're not a critical thinker, right? They're not like, what's in this for H&R Block? Why would H&R Block want to sell me this product?
But isn't sort of...
Let me see, what is their cut in this deal?
Isn't any sort of situation where like you're exchanging money?
Let me check the market. Let me see what I can get somewhere else. Hey, maybe if I go on this magical thing called Google, I might be able to find another investment, retirement investment that I can put my money in that will give me higher yields and cost me less in fees.
Yeah.
Right? How many people make that next step? Not many. And you know what the best thing about H&R Block was? Is that who are they preying on? They're preying on people who haven't made any kind of like retirement investment decisions, right? They skew lower on the socioeconomic and educational scale, right? So it's like taking candy from a baby. Yeah. If you're H&R Block, and it's a numbers game for them. They'll take so many, people, and they do their refunds for them, right? And they do a good job. I'm not saying that they're bad in their refunds, but they sell you these extra. It's like the warranty. Yeah. Hey, you bought a toaster. You want to buy a warranty for that? Well, I don't know. What's the chances that this thing will break in the next 3 years? And how much does the warranty cost? And how much will it cost me to repair? And do I even care? Maybe I could just go out and get a better toaster in a year. That'll cost even less, right? Maybe my uncle will give me his toaster because he says he doesn't really want it anyway. I could get a toaster on eBay for like nothing. For like I could go down to the flea market and get a toaster for like $1.
I agree. If you have this many opinions about investing, you probably shouldn't start your investing adventure by checking a box on an H&R Block thing.
But people don't have that kind of investment.
I mean, there's some people...
Or that experience. That's what I'm saying.
Some people just like, hey, let me check the box.
And you know what? If it hadn't been for the government, in this case, the New York Attorney General's office, H&R Block would still be screwing people over all over the country this way. So, yeah, perfect capitalism. You think H&R Block would have one day woken up and said, the executives rather, and said, you know what, I don't know that our customers are really getting a good deal. Let's fix it for them, and you know what, let's pay it back, because we kind of feel bad. No, nobody does that. No corporate executive has ever woken up and said, I wonder if my customer, unless and until another competitor comes in the marketplace, right? Like then maybe, but if both competitors do the same crap, then it's just a question of like, who's gonna get the dumb people in the door, or shouldn't say dumb, the less experienced people in the door, right?
Just a numbers game.
Well, that's what I'm saying, right? And so people assume also that, competition will solve all this stuff. No, you know what a competitor will do? If I were running the competitor H&R Block, I'd be like, man, H&R Block is, they got a lot of people who are making foolish investment decisions, and H&R Block is making a lot of money off that. You know what? I want a piece of that. So I'm going to do the same thing. Maybe I'll sweeten the pot a little bit. Yeah. Maybe I'll throw in a toaster with the deal. Whatever, right? But they're not necessarily going to be like, oh, H&R Block is cheating you, right? They might just try to run the same scam on you.
Yeah. There was I don't know where I saw this, a video probably, but someone did a study where they showed that for people who had like retirement accounts and they had to sign up for them.
Right.
If for one, they've got a certain amount of participation. With two, they got slightly more participation. With three, slightly more. And then once you get to five options you have to choose from, people stop doing it.
Yeah, they can't figure it out. It's too much.
It's not even that they can't figure it out. It's just they just keep putting it off. Right?
Oh, okay.
So then it's this is something I'll do later. I'll do it on the weekend. And they just keep putting it off because who has time to sit down and look at 16 different retirement options?
Yep.
You've got life to do. Right? And so maybe if you have experience or access to someone who has this kind of knowledgeability, you're going to be all right. But most people, put off. And I can just imagine if someone takes something very complicated as trying to figure out your retirement, just presents you something that is straightforward, simplistic. All you have to do is
Check box.
That's going to appeal to a lot of people.
And that's why they do it.
So,
They're not fools, right? You don't think they have a psychologists that are helping them figure out the best way to scam people? I mean, increase participation in whatever their fine investment product is.
But like that's how like everything is nowadays. Like at least for like.
Well, that's why my first thing when you asked me if I had a project for the country, what would it be? It would be education, how to think critically.
That goes along with my idea of getting rid of advertisement. Because I was thinking, like part of growing up for me and how I got kind of oriented in the world and what people do and how people live. Like you watch TV and you learn about like, you learn that plumbing gets clogged every once in a while. And if your drain gets clogged, you get this product.
Yes.
Right? Or like, if your sidewalk is slippery, you can do this and this with this company's salt and this company's shovel.
Yes.
You kind of get an idea of like what problems might arise in the world and how to deal with them. And to deal with them, use these products.
Yes.
Right? And I was just thinking like, that is very useful.
Is it though?
I think it is, because like, I mean, it's kind of sad that like parents and adults don't like feel, at least for my life,
Sure.
like TV taught me these things, but like, it's
Raised by TV.
That sort of thing.
That's like the cable guy.
What do you mean? The Jim Carrey show?
There's a Jim Carrey movie with Matthew.
Perry.
No, not Perry. That's from Friends. Matthew. I forget his name. Matthew Broderick. And Jim Carrey's character was raised by television, right?
Yeah, and so like you learn all these things, and that has value, for a kid. But at the same time, like it's very, I don't know, almost intrusive to some degree. But what if instead of products, it was just education on TV? Like just the same reason that like this stuff is kind of fun to watch for a kid. You can have that same stuff, right? Like life facts. And then
well, we used to have that. We used to have what was this show?
G.I. Joe?
No, wait. What was it? Schoolhouse Rock.
Yeah.
And we used to have The More You Know, like on NBC, and they'd have like the kind of The More You Know advertising or the PSAs.
Like that, but with like other stuff. And in between, I don't know, I don't really watch TV anymore, so I don't watch commercials per se, but yeah.
Well, you watch the internet.
Yeah.
You're on Facebook, so you watch commercials all the time.
Instead of seeing advertisement for something, what if it was just useful information?
Well, I think there is something that, unfortunately, I don't know, at some point, you realize that everything that you are watching is an advertisement.
Yeah.
It's all an advertisement. There's nothing that is produced for your consumption, whether it's for your eyeballs, your brain, your body, that is not something that's selling something to you.
Are you talking about even when the stories of shows sell like cultural norms?
Anything. Like yes. I mean, maybe it's not always an explicit sell.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're selling you a lifestyle, they're selling you a style, they're selling you something, some set of beliefs or ways of conducting yourself in the world. And sometimes that can be positive, right? Like that can be good. But, entertainment is something that is normative, right? They talk about sports teaching character, right? It's
like the sport
that's
itself.
A sales pitch. That is a sales pitch for sports.
Yeah.
Hey, sign your kids up. It's going to teach them character. No, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad deal, right? Or that it's not true. It just means they're trying to sell you something, right? Same thing with like football and major sports leagues. They in the beginning they have the Pledge of Allegiance and they sing the Star Spangled Banner and they have the soldiers come out.
Selling America.
Well, they're selling. They're cross-selling essentially, right? Like they're draping themselves in the flag. Like you feel more patriotic because you're going to spend those 4 hours watching, two teams fight over a bag of air, and watching a whole shit ton of commercials while you do it, and drink a lot of beer and eat Cheetos or whatever it is, hot wings or whatever, from Domino's or Papa John's or whoever the corporate sponsor happens to be in that moment. And I love sports, I'm not saying like don't watch sports, but it's all like a huge marketing machine to sell you crap.
Everything is. Because you take certain sources of information, you value certain sources of information much about checking your sources and making sure that they're legitimate. And
Yes.
when
And sometimes it can be like, sometimes they are selling you things that are good, that are helpful. I'm not saying like, oh, all products are bad, or, sales, marketing is bad.
Yeah.
It can be bad. It can be unethical. It can be, or amoral, or aethical, I guess, right?
But like before you consume any sort of information from a place, should you identify what their biases are?
I mean, that's almost impossible to do on
Yeah.
a moment-to-moment basis. But, when you're making big life decisions,
Fair.
maybe you should set, or forming important decisions about how you're going to conduct yourself in society, maybe you should take a step back for a minute and consider, why am I doing what I'm doing right now?
Every time I ask that, I never get a good answer though.
Well, I mean, I always think, what I hate more than anything is being manipulated.
Yeah.
And, they have all these studies about, advertising. And, one of the things that I remember is, I forget where I read this, but, the goal of like for cars, they show the person in the new car, and that person is successful. Whatever it is that if it's a truck, it might be a guy who's like an architect, or, a carpenter, or whatever it is, but he's like very obviously successful, high-performing carpenter. And if it's a sports car, it might be, I don't know, make up your own, fill in your thing, whatever the profession is. And it'll be, often it'll be like attractive, partner. Yes. It could be either way. I mean, it used to be a white woman, but now it's become a little bit more equal opportunity, and it's manipulation. But the idea, so I used to think that they were trying to make you jealous of that person, and that you were trying to, they're trying to say like, you should be jealous of this success, right, and this happiness that comes along with the people who drive a Buick.
They're selling the success and happiness, aren't they?
So they are trying to create jealousy, but they're trying to create jealousy of your jealousy of your future self. So you see that person as yourself. You fill in yourself, and you say, "Wow, I wish if I just had that.
If I had a tiger in my back seat, I would be happy."
You would have that success. You'd have that happiness.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's still true, or where I got that from, but it's one of those things where advertisers, when they, hey, your toilet's clogged, right? I need to have something that unclogs my toilet. They're not really manipulating you. Like, everyone needs an unclogged toilet. Like, everybody wants a working toilet, right? But when they're selling you cars and houses and whatever else, big ticket items, vacations, whatever, or bad habits like cigarettes. That always crack me up. When you look at a cigarette commercial,
I don't know. Do I really need an unclogged toilet though? I can just reach in there and get it.
Well, I was thinking that when you talk about these toilet cleaners, like you can just go to the hardware store and get one of these devices that just it's like a not a plunger.
It's a rubber glove.
No, you could do that too. I don't know. You might get your hands stuck. But I have one here where it's like this is what the plumbers use. There's like this long thing you just shove it. It's not a snake. I forget what they call it.
Is it for like pulling hair out because it's gross?
You can pull hair out. You can pull it in. You can just shove it down. It just clears the line. Now I bought that for like $10 at Home Depot.
Yeah.
Now you could buy one of those and you'll use it. It won't go bad.
Yeah.
Right, for your whole life.
Yeah.
Now, question where you want to put it. Like if you have a small apartment, you probably don't want your toilet cleaner, plunger thing like out and about.
That seems like a one-time use thing. Where you have one for emergencies, you use it.
No, the reason I got this thing is because I called it because one of these toilets got clogged. I couldn't unclog it with the Drano. I called the plumber up. What does he do? He gets in his truck. He gets one of his things. Whatever. Somebody clogged it. It wasn't me. So he comes in and I'm like, "Where did you get that thing? What is that?" And he did it he made $100 for the trip.
Yeah.
And he took 10 seconds. And that was it. He's done. I was like, "Man, where'd you get that thing?" He's like, "Home Depot."
Yeah.
I'm like, "How much are they?" He's like, $20.
I bet he was thinking.
So what did I do? I went and got my thing at Home Depot.
And this guy was like, "Oh, if only this guy had done some critical thinking and Googled a thing before calling me."
I mean, look, he was like, "Yeah, you should go get one."
Yeah.
He wasn't trying to trick me.
Yeah.
He doesn't know what he's going to find.
He just had knowledge that you didn't.
Exactly.
It wasn't like malicious or anything.
No. And he's not even the person that I called. I called like a plumber's service, and they just called somebody up that they knew was available. And then he was like, "Okay, yeah, go over it." And they don't know what they're
So you
gonna
gave 15% to those guys too?
Yeah, they got totally screwed.
Oh man. Don't we know plumbers?
Yes. But The plumber I know is busy. He's not, I mean, I can't call him. He's like a real guy who does real work.
Yeah.
Hey man, could you stop that $10,000 job you're doing so you can come like unplug my toilet? He's gonna, you know what he's gonna tell me? He's gonna be like, sure, Rich, it's gonna be $500.
Maybe. No, I don't think he would do that. It would be rude of you not to offer them. I don't think he would charge. He might charge.
I would charge.
Yeah.
If you took me off a job, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Education, critical thinking.
Advertisement. See, like, what if everyone just didn't advertise? Wouldn't the playing field be level? Like,
Well, you have to, I mean, you need some advertising. I'm not against advertising.
what do you mean? Like, what do you need that you don't know you need?
Well, there might be something that I don't know exists that will help me improve my life.
Why, if you don't know it exists, how will it improve your life?
Well, I'll give you an example. Here you go, here's one. Right? Let's
Are
say
you gonna name a thing that doesn't exist?
you can think of things that exist, but there are better things or for better things for your purpose. Right? So we were talking about reloading. Right? When I first started thinking or researching reloading, you know, when again, this you go way back far enough, like I'm sure this is how it started off. There was single stage press, right? You did one thing at a time on one cartridge.
Yeah.
Now they have turret presses,
Yeah.
which have like multiple dies around the top, so you can do multiple things with each. And then they have progressives where things are moving around. You can put the powder in one cartridge gets resized. You know, it's doing multiple things and it's automated, right? Now, if I'm just sitting there trying to mass produce 1,000 rounds of 9mm on a single stage press,
Why would you? Okay.
because I don't know, because I'm an amateur, right?
If that's your job, you've got to press.
But
Go to
then
the
there's
place
someone
where
who's
you got
like,
that thing.
you, let's say you come up with the idea of a turret press or a progressive press, and you want to like get the word out. Well, you gotta advertise.
No, I don't.
Rich Jackson, why are you still mass producing 9mm on a single stage press when I just invented this cool progressive press?
That's how I do it.
Days.
I go to you and I let you
But how do you
know.
know I'm doing it?
Because you came to my shop to buy the first thing.
No,
you
maybe
had.
not. Maybe I did it on Amazon. You
Fine.
don't know anything about me.
Okay, then go to Amazon and get the next thing.
No, I'm so busy
If you
like
got- if
filling
you
the
went on
orders with my
Amazon-
single stage
no,
press.
if
I
you
have no
went-
time to be on the
You went
computer.
on Amazon to get your whatever stage press. Scroll down. It's there are other
But maybe
presses
it
there.
didn't exist when I was first there, and then I started just getting that. I'm in my reloading room every day, just doing my
That's
single
great.
stage press.
Keep going.
No.
You're doing great.
No, because then somebody else who figures out that you have one of these things is pumping out 10
yeah,
times.
And then you hear about that guy.
How do I hear
and
about it? I'm
then-
downstairs
and then
just
you
on my
get-
single stage press
you get
every day,
another one. Like
working 10-hour days.
just network. Talk to other people.
I'm too
who
busy
make
on my
presses.
single stage press, bro.
Get an
Right?
employee.
I can't afford one because they're all working for the guy with the progressive press.
Man, you should have had better connections to the industry.
Well, I mean, what if I don't?
Life's all about networking.
Advertising can be helpful.
Yeah.
It can be helpful.
I feel like it's more helpful to the seller.
I
than
think
it is
there needs to
the
be
consumer.
more like ethical advertising though. That's the thing there needs to be ethical advertising. Like we used to have this. We used to have advertising. You say, look, you can't market to kids.
Yeah.
You can't do it.
Uh-huh.
I mean, you can't market to. You can't market. So it used to be you couldn't market prescription medicine.
Yeah.
You know, you could market it only to the doctors.
Yeah.
You couldn't go direct. Now that ended. You know, now I don't know if
I like those commercials. Though.
yeah, they're
really
hilarious. They're ask your doctor about this thing that we're selling you, so that you know we can say that we're.
Let them know.
Yeah. I mean, but you could. I mean, there used to be rules about what you could and couldn't advertise, and who you could and couldn't advertise to. There used to be you couldn't have cigarette ads on TV, which you still can't. You know, they used to have.
You also weren't allowed to say like words on TV, like certain words.
Yeah, they probably should still have that.
Yeah.
Oh, in public TV. I mean, public TV. That's still the rule.
What about free speech?
What about free speech?
Is advertising?
There's too much free speech.
Is advertisement?
I think there's way
relevant?
too much free speech.
Is advertisement protected under free speech?
To a limited extent, yes.
Huh.
But it's because they call it commercial speech.
Oh.
So it's a different.
It's
There's
different. I thought businesses were people nowadays.
well, they're persons, but they're not people, and they do have First Amendment rights, but they're somewhat more limited than
What's the legal difference between people and persons?
a person could be a corporation.
That's
It could be a corporate entity, or like a not-for-profit could be a person under the law.
Does that when you say that when you say a corporation, Does that mean like the group of people, or does that?
No, the corporation is a separate legal entity. It is separate from the group, whatever group of people that may or may not be working on the, for as employees or board members of the corporation.
Okay.
It has a separate legal status.
It's the thing.
It can sue, be sued, right?
It's the thing with legal power and responsibility.
Well, yes.
Okay.
Well, I mean, but it's funny. There's a lot of things that corporations have kind of evolved into that they can do now. So they can have free rights, First Amendment rights to a certain limited extent, right?
Do you have an example where it has been limited on the top of your head?
Where a corporation has been limited?
Ooh, I can think of one. Alcohol, they're not allowed to drink the things.
Well, if you talk about corporation, right, like what the corporation cannot do, right? Like, so I'm not an election lawyer or like a vote, but I can tell you there's a decision that essentially says, like, if you're a corporate entity, you can contribute, you can make political contributions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why? That's why.
Because they're people.
Well, they're persons.
They're persons.
There's natural people, right? There's humans, right? And that is, and the idea of a person has also changed. A person is a broader term than people.
Yeah, I include dogs in persons.
No, that is definitely not true.
Really?
Yeah, dogs are not persons.
Are you sure?
I'm positive.
They're so friendly though.
They are, and I would rather have dogs as persons than corporations.
They're so personable. How do you explain that?
What I'm dealing with, people.
Well, that's fun.
Yeah, and like corporations can have like first, and I think they have rights of due process, and they have rights of equal protection, but they're limited. They're limited in certain ways.
Could I renounce my peoplehood and become a person only?
You can incorporate yourself. No, I don't think a person. Well, you can incorporate something with your name or with, transfer your assets to the corporation, but it still won't be you, unless and until they find out that it is just a mere alter ego for you, and you're just using the corporate form as a shell, right, to do things or insulate yourself from liability, right? So if, let's say I want to defame somebody, right? I say talk crazy shit about them, right? And so what I say is like, hey, listen, I don't want to get sued, so I'll create this corporation, and then I'll just issue press releases from the corporation that I write, of course, that say this thing, right?
These are lies or not lies?
Total lies, pernicious, evil lies, libel, defamatory, on their face. I'm calling people like pedophiles and communists and whatever.
That's rude when it's not true.
Well, so then the person, if they come and they sue me, as they should. Yeah. I can't be like, no, you got to sue the corporation.
You're just like
that's
throwing
different.
up LLC shields.
That's it. You can't do that. I mean, you can, but it won't work.
Yeah.
Or it shouldn't work.
What about when the FBI slanders you? Is that allowed?
What do you mean?
I guess. Well, I was thinking about when the FBI sent MLK a letter telling him to commit suicide and stuff.
Well, I wouldn't think that's slander, but
well, they were making a lot of claims that he was
So there were. And I remember there was a thing about, I think it was Richard Jewell in the Atlantic Olympics. I'm not sure if it was the FBI or some other law enforcement agency. There was a bombing in the Atlantic Olympics, and somebody identified Richard Jewell, I think this is right, somebody as the suspect.
I remember this.
And he was like, I'm innocent.
Yeah.
I didn't do it. And they found out it was somebody else eventually.
Yeah.
And I believe that he sued.
Yeah.
And I know there are specific rules about suing the government. Now, I know them better on the state level than the federal level, but there are specific rules about what you can sue the government for. And I'm not sure the outcome of that case. He may have settled it, he may have done nothing, but it's very difficult to sue and win in federal court against the federal government.
I forget, I think MLK's family did get something.
They may have, right? Because you can sue for wrongful death or things like that, but
it might have been Malcolm, I forget. I don't know. But
But there is a whole cottage industry. Like there's a big industry, legal industry about like suing the federal government.
Yeah.
You know, it's I don't know that I've never been involved in a suit against the federal government like that for tort, right? For personal injury, essentially.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I know it is difficult, and I know there are like, for example, like if you're as a lawyer, when you file something in court, you have like an absolute immunity, right? So if I want to file something like I want to sue somebody for some crazy thing that's not true, you can't turn around and sue me for availing myself of the courts. There may be exceptions to that. So that's why, like, you know, when Giuliani and Linwood and Sidney Powell were saying all this crazy stuff about Dominion voting systems, if you do it in a court filing, you have some immunity.
Yeah.
But when you say it in press conferences outside of court, they can sue you for it.
Yeah, because I was like thinking about, I guess, free speech, and you know, it's nice that we have the right to meet up in groups and say whatever we want. I guess not whatever we want, but you know, speak freely. But I was looking at like the history of the FBI assimilating and going undercover into various groups of people and then distributing information and basically counterintelligence to help create discohesion. What's the word?
Discord, chaos.
Discord, yeah, among group members and like, you know, undermine leadership.
Yes.
And all that. And like some of the things that they would write and distribute were true, or like could be proven to be true with evidence, and other stuff would just be like not true. And
Well, the government doesn't have a First Amendment right. It's a government.
yeah, it's weird, but like we have the protection to not be face repercussions from the government when we speak out, but we
For
don't
certain
have
things.
for certain things.
Some-
But we don't have any protections from the government speaking
Well,
out
you
against
do. I
us.
mean, you have protections. They're just, and it's very hard, right? If you are a designated criminal group, right? Sometimes that could be a very arbitrary, if not downright evil way to designate somebody. I'm not saying, but let's say you're a member of the Proud Boys, right? And you advocate violent overthrow of the government. It's very difficult for you to sue in court for some sort of defamatory,
Yeah.
right, content that you think the government has, you know, perpetrated against you.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think you can sue. I'm not saying you cannot sue the federal government. You can, and people have, and they can win. It's just not easy.
And even if you do win, though, like you still have to face the consequences of the initial action that was perpetrated, and that might be enough to, I don't know, make it, even if you win, not worth it. You know.
Well, it's a very interesting thing. You know, I was telling you about that play that I watched on Amazon, and I thought it was brilliant. But you know, one of the things that she talks about,
Which play was it?
what the Constitution means to me.
Yeah.
Awesome. It was really good. No matter what, you know, it's very powerful and informative. I'm sure a lot of people will disagree with whatever if enough people watched it, but I think it's pretty good stuff. I learned a lot about the Constitution. But what I was going to say is that, you know, she talks about very specific cases. And in one of the cases, it's a horrific case, she tells a story about how, you know, there's this woman, she gets into a fight with her, I think she turns her husband in or something for beating her up. And he gets his guns, takes the kids, or no, he takes the kids, he gets a gun, and kills himself and the kids. And now before that all happens, she calls the police, right? And she goes to the police and says, you know, hey, listen, this guy's in Connecticut. She says, you know, the guy is crazy, he's gonna, you know, he's threatening me, he's gonna get the gun, and whatever, he's kidnapped the kids. And basically the cops are like, go home.
Yeah.
Stop bothering us. Stop calling us. And eventually the guy goes and he, you know, kills the kids. And so she goes, she sues the government. Basically, she sues the police department, or the county, I guess. And she wins in federal court. She says, you know, look, you guys had, and this is I forget what the law was that she was suing under. Maybe it was equal protection. But it goes all the way up to the Supreme Court. And at the Supreme Court, they debate, the word shall and whether shall means must, right? Well, the police must, because there was something about like, you shall do this, right? And that would indicate that the government was required, right, to protect you.
That just means that they will, right?
Well, shall,
if they can.
so shall, well, she makes this point somewhat obliquely, but if I said thou shalt not,
that's
or
for
thou
sure.
shalt not commit adultery, or thou shalt, you think God is just saying, hey, you really shouldn't do that, right? Maybe.
That's a good counterpoint.
And she makes it, that's not my counterpoint.
Yeah.
And her extra added little bar was that, Justice Scalia, who was a devout Catholic, was on the side of like debating what shall really means, right? So, and they're textualists, like they're very much like, what does this particular word mean in 1852 when it was passed?
But you don't create a new obligation for your whole system, right?
Well, look, this is the type of like legal wrangling that goes on, right? And eventually what she does is she makes this point, or the court makes this point. She was like, I couldn't wrap my head around it. So, I read this decision, I listened to the arguments, it just infuriated me because the language seemed pretty clear. And so she's like, I called up a bunch of constitutional scholars. And she's a layperson, I don't think she's a lawyer. And I might be wrong. And she's like, they explained to me that there's two different types of constitutions. There's the positive constitution, there's a negative constitution. And we have a negative constitution. It tells everyone what the government cannot do to you. It doesn't, at least the federal government, does not typically say what you are entitled to, right? It doesn't create obligations on behalf of the government that it must fulfill. Now, some state governments or some state constitutions do this, right? They create a constitutional right to minimal education. They have a constitutional, provision that says, look, the government is required to provide you with something. Right?
Would that include policing? Would that include policing?
I don't know. It depends on the Constitution. So, which her point is, that I think goes to your idea, right? The government, Congress can impose obligations upon the federal government, right, through legislation, but the Constitution itself is more of a, thou shalt not, government rather than a thou must, right? Like you have to protect. When the police know that you are in danger, that they have to go out of their way to protect you. And it's a very interesting point. But, having said that, like I said, there are laws that impose, and it used to be also that you couldn't sue the federal government at all, right? Because there's a thing called sovereign immunity. So they've created all these amendments, or not amendments, but these laws that essentially carve out a way for citizens to sue the federal government in federal court. You can actually sue, you can't sue the federal government in state court, but you can do it in federal court, but you have to abide by certain rules and only for certain client claims and so on and so forth, certain limits. I mean, I don't know, I didn't do this work, but it's a whole different thing. But that's our Constitution, Kevin. And the reason is, if you think about who the founders were, there were a bunch of slave owners, or at least half of them were, who didn't want the government to come in and stop them and interfere with their slavery, or their industries that required slave labor.
No, weren't they mad that they were getting their people stolen and taken for?
Well, some were.
Some were. Anyway.
But I don't think the founders were really concerned all that much about like, hey, are all the people going to have health care and education?
Probably not. Education's a weird one. Because how you can't objectively teach history, right? Like, there's not like, you don't sit a student down and fill them with dates and numbers and facts. And
you could try.
You can, but they're never gonna be able to tell you anything about it.
Some can.
I mean, some can reproduce tests, but I think for most people tend to read the news and read history things in terms of a story, a narrative.
Yes.
Right? And most schools, and I think anyone, whenever you teach history, you have to teach, you don't have to, but it is taught through the lids of the story. So how do you decide which story to tell? Do you tell the story that's valuable?
What's your goal of teaching history? If you want to teach kids how to think critically, you might teach it one way. If you want to teach kids how to passively receive whatever propaganda you're trying to shove down their throats, you'll teach it another way. Are you teaching to a test? You're like, hey, you know what? Our school district is dependent upon these funds to pay our teachers and our administrators. Therefore, kids, you're going to learn everything that you need to get a great grade on this test that someone else has made.
How do you judge a person's critical thinking skills?
What do you mean?
Like, could you do that with a Scantron test? I guess you could. With math.
Well, I mean, there's different ways. Like, for example, when
History, though.
they had, I don't know if they still, I'm sure they do. They have an LSAT,
Yeah.
which is the legal,
Yeah.
standard aptitude test.
Yeah.
And they have logic, they have reading comprehension, and they have
The logic quiz test or logic game.
there are logic games. There's logical reasoning,
Yeah.
and there's reading comprehension.
Yeah.
So
But that's like mostly written, right? Like
no, that's all Scantron.
Really?
Yeah, it's all multiple choice.
Yeah, I think, yeah. No, I don't think different.
So I mean, those three. So being a lawyer, maybe I'm over privileging critical thinking. I could be guilty of that as a lawyer. Maybe that's our stock and trade. Therefore, I think it's the most important thing.
Yeah.
I'll admit my own biases, but I think it is pretty helpful. That's kind of the. No, I don't think that just because you get a great grade on your LSAT or a poor grade on your LSAT means that you are, necessarily you could just be a terrible test taker or a really good test taker. But in general, I would say that's one example of how you can test for critical thinking.
But like,
Because logic is critical thinking, right? Like being able to think logically and reason logically
yeah.
is what critical thinking is.
But like, you can't have, I mean, you could, but everyone taking the LSAT would be weird.
I'm not saying you have to take the LSAT. I'm saying you could construct a curriculum. And that's the other thing. Like there are courses. Like I took a course to prepare me for the LSAT.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I would have done. Look, I would have crushed that test on logical reasoning and reading comprehension,
Yeah.
no matter what.
Yeah.
Logical games, I had to work really hard at because it's not something that I'm inherently good at.
Yeah.
So logical games, there is a method, there is a way of tackling. There's, you get to learn like what are the questions they're going, like generally what are the questions they're going to ask you, and how do you tackle each one because there's different, and then how do you maximize, because there's levels of difficulty for the questions. So you want to make sure you get the most questions right. So you don't want to like get stuck on the hardest question of that particular problem. You want to make sure you go through all the easy ones, and then you get to the next question, you do all those easy ones, and there's usually 4, and then you go back and you tackle the hard ones if you have time, because there's only really 1 or 2 really hard questions on each one of those puzzles. So there's a method, and if you don't know the method, you get stuck, and that's test taking. That's not your ability to reason through. You have a limited amount of time. You gotta learn a method.
But it's so weird that
Make a diagram.
like, why would you? I mean, there's a basic amount of like logic and stuff in math, but I think it's sad that you can't take this type of class earlier on. Like in high school, I took a what's it called, epistemology class, theory of knowledge. Loved it.
Yeah.
And it was great. But like you had to sign up for it. Like
Yes.
you had to do this specific program in order to take this class at all. Everyone else was just like.
Well, here's a great example, right? When I first got here, I remember we had dinner with this family that had lived here for a while. They weren't from here either. But I remember their 8-year-old son came. We was at the dinner table and we were talking. Our kids were still, we had only 2 and they were really young. He was like 8 or 10 or something. And we're talking about, he was at the table, he was really articulate. And I was just asking him questions. He's a smart little kid, like really smart. And I was asking him, like, what's your favorite subject at school? And he's like, well, I'm starting a business and I has a, we're doing this and that. And, and this is not uncommon in, I don't know what the public schools are like here, but in the private schools, there's a lot of entrepreneurial classes, like how to start a business. It may not always be like a class, it might be like a project that you get in the course of a class. But the idea of, hey, you can start your own business. You can be an entrepreneur. Let's talk about what that means and how do you do it.
Yeah.
This is like a core component in some of these schools.
That's so funny.
It's something that they sell. Now, when I was a kid, they weren't like, they were like, I was a kid, I was like, okay, I'm going to be a paper boy, or I'm going to go be a stock boy in the back, or I'm going to go, I'm going to work, I'm going to be a worker.
Did your school, all right, so my school had a thing, like there's this place you go to downtown, it's like this tiny little city, right? And what they do is you bring your whole class, and they assign everybody jobs in this little city.
They have this in Japan.
Really?
They have this in Japan, yeah. They had this in Indiana?
Yeah. And
what was
so
it called?
I don't know, I was like 5. It was like
My kids went to one of these in Japan. It was like a theme park, and they get to be like a fast food worker or a mechanic.
It wasn't a theme park. It was like a Chuck E. Cheese.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah. And so like we would run around, and then I ended up like being an accountant or something, which was nice because I got like mad bank from that job. So I was like, buying all this candy. Anyway, but yeah, it's like most of it is just like let's teach these kids how to have jobs and do labor and like sweeping floors and serving and good work, but it wasn't like let's teach you how to be a boss.
Right.
And,
no, it's how to be a good worker.
Yeah.
How to be an employee.
Yeah, and it's valuable information, and it was a glimpse into the future. I mean, not mine, but for some people's.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's funny is the cool jobs that everyone wants are usually the ones that are like the crappies.
Yeah.
Right? And the ones that are like boring, they're the accountant. I didn't know anybody in high school wanted to be an accountant.
Yeah.
There were a couple people maybe wanted to be doctors.
I mean, I started thinking about it after that because it was like a decent amount of fake money that I was just like,
wait a minute, you start adding it up.
Felt pretty good.
Because just imagine if your school was like, hey, Kevin, you're going to start your own website, we're going to do a business, you're going to think about a product, you're going to come up with a use case, you're going to learn all the lingo, like how to do a business plan, let's talk about how to read a P&L, right? Like those things, like you don't know that, you're not educated about
those
that.
P&Ls,
But I guess, this is stuff that you should, critical thinking should. So, but why don't we teach that? Why don't we teach everybody a little logical reasoning? Why do we insist on teaching them, I don't know, chemistry? Why does everyone need to learn chemistry?
What's wrong with chemistry?
Nothing's wrong with chemistry, but chemistry's
fun. I like it.
I mean,
it's the building blocks of life. If you don't
you are
understand
correct, and it's the
chemistry,
same thing. It's the same thing of
biology,
of algebra or trigonometry.
All those things are vitally important to
No,
understand.
they're not. You know what trigonometry I use in my everyday life?
Probably more than you think.
Zero.
Anytime you
None. How much algebra do I use?
Catch a
Zero.
Anytime you look in
How
the
much chemistry do I use? None. Zero.
Eat every day.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean I drive my car too, but I don't understand the what goes on the combustion engine.
That's a problem.
Gas goes in,
you should look
and
into
then
it
my
so
engine goes fast.
So you are uninformed, and maybe
blissfully
you
ignorant.
should use your critical thinking skills and learn how cars work.
You know what? I need to eat too, but they didn't teach me how to hunt in grade school, right?
You could use your critical thinking skills and learn those skills.
Well, that's what I'm learning. That's what I'm using.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Right? So, I don't know. It's we're teaching the I don't know, maybe not enough of the good stuff and too much of the stuff that I won't say that chemistry is useless or should never be taught. But why is chemistry a requirement in high school? Why?
It's a carryover from when we were in the STEM wars with the Soviets.
Yes.
Right? We needed chemists, we needed physics people, engineers, all that.
Well, we just needed some people that were just had a passing reference or comfort level, right? So that there were people, right? This is Silicon Valley. They actually used to make silicon chips. They used to make vacuum tubes. They used to have sheds all through a Mountain View and everywhere, where people would just go in with their soldering guns and do whatever magic they did to these things. You don't need to be. You're a technician, right? You have to be educated. You have to know how to use the tools. You have to kind of have an idea.
But you're not gonna
You're
advance
not doing
chemistry.
Yeah.
You're not gonna be Elon Musk in chemistry. Not anymore anyway. Most of the big business has already been tapped, and there are some exceptions where you can make money by
But
discovering.
they should be teaching kids it should be
tech.
just
right now
coding.
it's tech. Yeah. But
Coding,
we gotta. I don't know. It's.
And that's a lot of critical thinking too, because it's not
how many coders does a society need really?
A lot.
Really?
Well, but here's the thing. Like you said, right? So it used to be that if you wanted to drive a car, you better be pretty handy because the car broke down all the time.
Yeah.
Right? And you had to know how to maintain your automobile.
Yeah, if you had a car,
you couldn't just take it to any old place because it wasn't we have a tire place. We have 18 tire places in mechanics all up and down.
Yeah.
Winchester Boulevard.
Pretty nice.
Right? So, but 100 years or whatever, 75 years ago, you had a gas station every 50 miles. I don't know.
You could run out of gas pretty easily.
So you had to really know what you were doing.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it's my car broke down. I hop on an Uber and then I send somebody to go pick up my car and bring it to the dealership, and the dealership fixes it and comes back to me. And first of all, it's so complicated that even if I have a passing knowledge of the combustion engine, it's not going to help me with
Even
an advanced engine.
Even with your critical thinking skills?
Even with my yes, if I had unlimited amounts of time, I could probably maybe figure it out, but it's all computerized now, right? Like, it's not like you just take it, oh, I hear a clunking sound and I think it's your carburetor.
Oh, you could go to, like an AutoZone and ask them to borrow their computer chip.
Maybe, you could diagnose it that way. That's true. But anyway, right? Nowadays, like, everything is code, right? So it's kind of like what the car was 50 years ago, kind of like what computers are now, right? I mean, this is, a lot of people would benefit from, not everybody, I'm not saying everybody, well, maybe everybody should learn. I think it would be cool if everyone learned some shop too, right? Like, I had shop.
Shop's good. I think
I learned how to work, like the lathe and how to work the saw and the press. I mean, we had like metalworking and woodworking, and that stuff was super cool.
I think all of that is good.
Cooking, I had home ec. That was my favorite class.
To get a person ready for life, all of those things are necessary. You gotta teach them chemistry, you gotta teach them tech, you gotta teach them physics, biology, English, like all of that
You
stuff.
don't need biology.
You need biology.
No, I don't need biology. You need sex education. That's what you need. You don't need biology.
You don't need biology.
You don't need biology.
You are alive.
Yes,
You don't
that's
want to
true.
know anything about that.
No, it's not saying
You
I'm not
don't
good enough.
think that
Don't get me
anything
wrong. I'm
about
not
that
saying
is
you
going to be
shouldn't.
applicable.
You shouldn't.
You want a whole group of people who don't know what evolution is?
No, I'm not saying that.
Yeah, that's what you're saying.
No, I'm not saying
That's
that.
what you're saying. No biology. Where do you think?
I mean,
you're talking about evolution. We're talking about critical thinking.
I mean, I don't think of evolution.
You want a group of people who aren't really quite sure where anything comes from at all, but you want them to know history.
We teach biology.
Biology is history.
And there's like 50% of the population having learned biology that still believe that like God put the dinosaur bones in the earth to fool us, to test us.
Are you sure that they learned biology? Because that's not what learning biology
They learned some biology. They learned something.
Uh-huh.
I'm saying just because you learn biology doesn't mean you learn biology or evolution.
That doesn't make sense.
Yes, it does. Because
If
I tell you,
biology,
if I tell you
biology.
the theory of evolution is just a theory and is just as valid as the theory that the Earth is 6,000 years old and the dinosaur bones were planted.
I don't think that's a current working theory.
It is. If you were in like Kansas.
That's okay. I guess. Yeah. I don't know. Biology.
I mean, I think
I like knowing how I work.
that's why I said like maybe human biology, maybe like a little bit of like the basics, like a beginner's handbook of like this is how you work.
Okay, like cells too, right?
Do we really need that?
Cellular biology.
All right. You're persuading me that we need biology.
Biology's cool.
All right, I'll give you biology.
I don't know. I just think.
Yeah, because then you need like people to learn about viruses and vaccines, and that'd probably be good for people to like understand like kind of how that stuff works. Like science is important.
Yeah.
But you know what they don't
We
really.
don't need to teach them any vaccination.
It would be cool. It would be cool. It would be cool if they did like science education that kind of maybe they're doing this already. Maybe I'm kind of behind the curve here, where like all of these things are part of like your education, like your science education, right? Like you learn biology, you learn chemistry, you learn physics, you learn like these things are like kind of the big stuff. You learn. I don't know how many people learn geology, but you learn. Kind of like
in my school, the dumb kids took geology.
Rocks for jocks.
Yeah. Not to say it's like that's just the way my school did things.
No, but I think that is fine. I take it back. Right? Fine. I will give you those. Science is important.
The AP.
Sorry for anybody who was mad at me for saying science was not important. I can see the point.
The AP program is pretty good. I think like standardizing the stems and the non-stem stuff.
All right, fine. I give you history and science.
I don't know.
And critical thinking. What about literature? Literature is really political. That's really political. People get in trouble. There's like evolution is the big one, and then like history. I mean, I guess it's all education is critical because it's all like what are we filling our kids' heads with? These crazy ideas about evolution.
The thing about like literature is I didn't like the subject as much as I like the teachers.
Yeah,
like,
that's true.
All of those.
That's because you know why? What are they teaching you? This is the problem with like English literature.
I had good English teachers.
No, you can have great, but they were like, I remember I would read these books that were so far above my head in terms of like the subject matter.
Yeah.
They're like, what? That I didn't know what was happening.
Wuthering Heights, Scarlet Letter.
No, I mean, those are, like, Scarlet Letter's a good example, right? Like, I don't know that you really have the kind of the
It's a giant
maturity.
The imagery is pretty clear. clear.
No, but they dumb it down so much. They dumb down like the themes.
The theme was
What was the other one I was thinking of? I was thinking of like Catcher in the Rye.
Yeah.
I was very mystified by Catcher in the Rye.
I never read that. I heard it was not to be read after you're a certain age or something.
Really?
Yeah, it's all angsty or something. I don't know.
It's very angsty. But there were certain books that I were like, this is cool, and then there were books that I'm like, why am I reading
Or
this?
like I remember like Tale of Two Cities.
Oh, that's a good one.
And like being like super into like finally we're reading some like intellectual stuff and then just
That was like the Pulp Fiction of the day.
Slowly deflated. Yeah, because it
It's a
came
serial.
out in serial, right? He was the guy who would get paid by the word.
Yeah, Charles Dickens.
What else? Yeah, so many books that I didn't appreciate back then, but what I appreciate now is that critical thinking, the ability to look at a work and choose a scope with which to analyze it and go from there. And I don't know, I never really valued the skill
Here we
of
go.
English.
Critical thinking. You ready? We're going to bring it back to jiu-jitsu because we're going to leave.
Okay.
Here's the thing that I noticed the other day. On
Uh-huh.
BJJ Fanatics.
Are we going back to this meme?
No.
Oh.
BJJ Fanatics.
Uh-huh.
No, I don't want to talk about that again.
Okay.
You can go and get Marcelo Garcia, or Roger Gracie, or Lucas Lepre, or Andre Galvao.
For free?
No, I wish.
Or like Wayfair?
No. You pay all the money. Like if you want to go buy the Andre Galvao or the Marcelo Garcia side control system, whatever. They're all systems now.
Yeah.
It's going to be like whatever it is, $100.
Yeah.
It's $100 like the first time and then like 6 months later it's like $35, whatever. They're just trying to sell it. The bloom is off the rose, so it's not as hot anymore because there's 10 other systems that got published since that system got published. Probably 10 other by Andre Galvao or whoever. But here's the thing, right? And how much do they cost? I mean, sometimes these things are like $200.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you just go on to atos.com for like $25 a month? And you'll get all that information and more for like a tiny little fraction of what you're paying for BJJ for the instructional videos on BJJ Fanatics.
That would require at least 5 clicks.
Marcelo Garcia has had a website that has like some obscene number of videos.
So many clicks. Have you experienced what's the word? UX, UI of like those video websites?
Yes, it's
terrible.
easy. Some of them are better than others. Some of them are better than others, right? But what I'm saying is, $25 a month. I mean, you could get the Mendes brothers, like every video they've ever made, and they have high quality stuff. They don't have BJJ Fanatics yet. I'm sure they're working on it.
I feel like if you're considering buying a technique video, money's probably not a problem for you. Just go ahead and buy
But
the
what I'm saying, this is the thing, like this is logical reason, whether the money is an issue or not. And I think for most people, the money is an issue. I mean, look, you can spend so over the course of time, right? Like let's say I just wanted to learn Estimalox,
Yeah.
right? I can go for $25 for a month and watch as many Estimalox videos as I can keep my eyes open for.
You can do it for free if you want, but okay.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
Or I could spend $200 and get the DVDs or whatever, the instructional videos. Why would I pay the $200?
Because you can.
Yeah, but that's not.
That's the reason why most people buy jiu-jitsu information stuff, right? It's not going to change anyone's life, Like you do it because you have an interest and you can. Like it's.
I think there are. What I'm trying to say is that if you were given the decision between those two things,
Yeah, I wouldn't do it. But
what is the rational decision?
The rational is I can't.
You're getting more videos for less money.
The point isn't to get the video or the knowledge, it's to say that you bought the DVD. When it came out, I just got this new thing. I get to watch it. You're not going to be able to watch it. I have this thing that
Yeah, but I could just go and buy on, like, if you have the, like, hey Rich, I just got the Marcelo Garcia X-Guard system from BJJ Fanatics. I'll be like, Kevin, I could go get it for free on YouTube.
It's like getting showy roll gear, right? Like, you can get a gi for $60 on Amazon.
Yeah,
you don't have to buy a gi for $400. You do it.
There's no
because you
gi
can.
for $400.
I don't know, whatever. Right, I don't know how much do showy rolls cost.
I'm not sure.
How was a good one?
But, well, whatever. If you buy just like whatever they release, it's usually like $100 and, I don't know, I haven't bought one for a long time, but I think it's like, let's say it's 100 and, well, after shipping and all that, it's probably like $180.
Yeah, like why would you?
Because it looks good.
Okay.
Because it looks cool.
Because you want it.
No, because it looks good.
Okay, and you
It
can't.
fits me well.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
All these
It's high quality.
arbitrary reasons.
No, high quality is a good reason. That's not arbitrary. You want a high quality.
These
Anyone
are
look
high
good too.
quality techniques.
No, they're the same exact.
How do you know? You don't have the DVD. I have the DVD.
Critical thinking. Critical thinking.
Critical thinking. Not all the
Don't
time.
buy the DVD. Like, at least go check out what you can get. Like some websites are kind of crappy. I will give you that. But some websites are awesome. Like Marcelo has an awesome website. I don't know why anybody would buy his. If someone knows, put it in the comments. What is the advantage of buying the instructional video series for $200 or more?
You have more instructional DVDs than anyone I've ever met.
Yes, but they're not Marcelo Garcia instructional DVDs.
What is like? Why? Why do you have so many?
I like to learn.
Okay, but you could have learned for free elsewhere.
That's not true.
You could have.
That's not true.
You could have.
There was no, so for me, there's no, like, if I want to learn something, like, let's say I see something that Hoffa Mendes is doing.
Yeah.
Like, there's nowhere for me to go to learn what Hoffa Mendes is doing, other than subscribing to AOJ Online. And then I'll get a lot of what Hoffa Mendes is teaching. So if I want to get access to, like, his instruction, like his knowledge or his, then I'll go and get the.
Where's your Hoffa Mendes DVD?
There is none because he never put out.
I haven't seen it.
There isn't one.
So are all those like unique techniques?
There's no DVDs over there. Those are all books.
I'm pointing to an idea.
You're pointing to the idea over there. I have purchased a lot of instructional videos.
Yeah.
Generally, I do not purchase instructional videos and I don't still have, like Hodger Gracie, for example, has a website. It's not the fanciest website in the world. It's not the best website I've ever seen. It may be different and better now, but it was good. Like the stuff I wanted to learn, I learned a lot. And it was, weren't that many techniques when I was subscribing. But I've subscribed, I watched what I wanted to learn, and then I was like, okay, let's move along, right? And
did you keep your membership or did you cancel?
No, you cancel it, right? Because you're like, okay, like I've pretty much consumed the stuff that I want to consume, and now I'm done. Wow.
Well, I mean, it could be like some people have, for example, Patreon, where it's just like you can
still continue to support, right? Like Marcelo, I probably supported Marcelo Garcia for longer than I. At some point, I mean, when his thing came out, like that was by far the best, and I think it still probably is the best of all the, like, in terms of navigation and content. That was the kind of the website that set the bar or set the standard for everybody else, and I just watch that all the time because I love Marcelo Garcia and I wanted to, like, why wouldn't you not want to learn? Like what he does, and why would you? I mean, it's just fun to watch him like roll. And this becomes more important. Like after I moved from New York, like I didn't have that many. I didn't purchase. I don't know if I had any. I mean, I had some. I had VHS tapes back in the day before before I was actually able to train, right? Like at an academy with a black belt, you get the videos because that's how you get black belt instruction, right? Because
really.
Yeah, when I first started in Philadelphia, Steve Maxwell was a purple belt. He was actually a blue belt. And then when I got to Miami, there was a black belt who taught, and then I didn't buy any instructionals. I don't think. Maybe I did. Maybe with VHS tape, but I was a poor graduate student, so I didn't buy much. When I got to New York, I was at Henzo's, and there was like no reason why I would buy anything at Henzo's. So I was like, I'm at Henzo's. Like, who's going to teach me more than what I'm learning here at Henzo's? Like, I have enough here. And then after a while, Marcelo had his website, and I was like, I love Marcelo, so I'm gonna check it out. I'm trying to think, like it's been a while now. I mean, it's almost 10 years since I left New York.
Did you keep it a secret when you signed up?
Everyone knew. I was doing X-Guard. I mean, everyone knew.
Yeah.
Nobody did X-Guard except for Marcelo. So of course I'm doing it, and I'd be like, oh, I'm watching. And he had DVDs though. So I did buy Marcelo's DVDs before he had his website, because I was like, if you want to learn what Marcelo's doing, then you have to buy the DVD. So it's like John and to a certain extent Gordon or Gary. They don't have an online website.
Yeah.
So if you want to learn what they're teaching, you have to go to, and now you can't go to the academy, so now you have to buy their stuff if you want to learn what they have to teach. So that's rational. But if you're like, to me, I'm like, okay, if you want to learn how to pass the guard, you could, I mean, Lucas Lepre has a website, it's $20 bucks a month, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, he's one of the best guard passers of all time, right? Like, there's only so many ways that people pass the guard. I mean, and if you want to, if you don't like the way Lucas Lepre does it, then you can go look at Hoffa, or you could go look at Kaio, or you could go look at Andre Laval. You know, like, right? I mean, there's a lot of content out there that is, and like you said, you can go on YouTube and there'll be a video from Andre Laval, or Braulio Estima, or Marcelo Garcia, or
literally dozens of people you've never heard of.
But who are very good.
Yeah, exactly.
Or people that are world famous, right? Like there's definitely a video of Roger Gracie teaching how to pass the guard.
Yeah.
Right? On YouTube, right? Or you could just go watch his matches. There's a lot of matches.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's just so. But when I moved, the story was that when I moved away from New York and I came here, I didn't have anybody to teach me anymore.
Yeah.
So that's when I kind of lost my mind and bought a lot of DVDs, because I was like, I want to learn, right? I want to learn this stuff. I don't have anybody to teach me.
Yeah. So
I had to kind of turn to third parties at that point, which I think is great, because I also felt like I learned a lot by watching. Because you just watch what you have to watch, right? You learn where you learn. I don't think that's a bad thing.
it's not.
But I think it is. You can get carried away, and I probably could get carried away a little bit. Because you go. The thing is, you go from a place where there's all these incredible world champions in MMA, like really successful guys, to Camp California.
Yeah. That happens.
Anyway, I'm not saying I don't know why you're reading on DVDs.
It's just like, I don't know.
Or you can just come to Samurai Brazilian Jiu Jitsu and learn from Kevin and Rich.
DVDs have value they have a time and place, but I mean, for most people, like, just go train. Go ask your training partner what they do. Ask your instructor what they do. Ask someone who trains that is willing to talk to you and like answer your questions.
Yes.
DVDs are great, but having someone who is willing to like look at what you're doing and respond to it is.
I think what you should do is go on Reddit every day and then just do whatever the top technique on Reddit, on the BJJ subreddit is, and just try to do that technique every day. And go in and make sure you ask your professor about whether or not he thinks or she thinks that technique is the best ever. And then if they disagree with you, say, yeah, but I saw it on Reddit, so it must work.
Reddit's good. I've seen good stuff on Reddit.
Yes, there's also a lot of bad stuff on Reddit.
Yeah, it's true of everything.
That's true. All right. Hasta la vista. Say bye, Kevin.
Bye, Kevin.
I knew you were going to say that.